All right, I am live. Let me see. I'm praying everything goes well. All right. Mm. Okay, so mute screen. All right, so we're going to be talking about First Samuel um, 4 1 through 22. The Philistines captures the ark. Here we go. And the word of Samuel came to all of Israel. Now Israel went out to battle against the Philistines. They encamped at Ebzar, and the Philistines encamped at Apiac. The Philistines drew up in line against Israel, and when the battle spread, Israel was defeated before the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 men on the field of battle. And when the people came to the camp, the elders of Israel said, "Why has the Lord defeated us today before the Philistines? Let us bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord here from Shiloh, that it may come among us and save us from the power of our enemies." Okay, so we're talking about the Philistines decide to go to war with Israel. And as they go to war with Israel, they won the fight with Israel, and they're talking. There's Israel assumes that God has departed from them. Let's. But how many of you know that even when it seems like you are defeated, God is still with you? But Israel can be something else. So let's continue. So they said, "Let us bring the covenant of the Lord here from Shiloh, that it may come among us and save us from the powers of our enemies." So the people sent to Shiloh and brought from there the ark of the covenant of the Lord of hosts, who is enthroned on the Sharon. And the two sons of Eli, Hopkins and Pharmacist Finehas, were there, and with the art of the covenant of God. Now let's go back. Eli was he had sons, and his sons uh, did not obey God. They started doing what they want to do, and Eli never tried to correct them. So Samuel, who was the young boy that Hannah prayed for, and she gave him back to the Lord, was the one that God was raising up to be the prophet to take over for Eli, and told Eli of the bad things that God was not happy and was going to come of him and his sons. Okay, so as soon as the ark of the covenant of the Lord came into the camp, all Israel gave a mighty shout so that the earth resounded. And when the Philistines heard the noise of the shouting, they said, "What does this great shouting in the camp of the Hebrews mean?" And when they learned that the ark of the Lord had come to the camp, the Philistines were afraid, for they said, "A God has come into the camp." And they said, "Woe to us, for nothing like this has happened before. Woe to us! Who can deliver us from the power of these mighty gods?" Referring to the little g, not capital G. Take courage and be men, O Philistines, lest you become slaves to the Hebrews, as they have been to you. Be men and fight. So the Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated. And they fled, and every man to his home, and there was a great slaughter. For 30,000 foot soldiers of Israel fell, and the ark of God was captured by the Philistines, and the two sons of Eli, they died. Right. So now we're talking about the death of Eli. The death of Eli, a man of Benjamin, ran from battle line and came to Shiloh the day with his clothes torn, with dirt on his head. When he arrived, Eli was sitting on his seat by the road, watching, for his heart trembled of the ark of God. Eli was so discouraged that the enemies were able to take the ark of God that it affected his health. And when Eli heard the sound of the cry out, he said, "What is this uproar?" And then the man hurried and came to Eli, told Eli. Now Eli was 98, and his eyes were set so that at this time, Eli's health was failing. Eli was losing his eyesight. So like when trouble like this, when you in your old age, you can't take too much before, it take a toll on you, and you will soon pass. And so he who brought the news answered and said, Israel had fled before the Philistines, and there has also been a great defeat among the people. Your two sons also are dead. The ark of God has been captured. As soon as he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell backward from his seat by the side of the gate, and his neck was broken, and he died, for the man was old and heavy. He had judged Israel for 40 years. Now the daughter-in-law, the wife of Phinehas, of one of Eli's sons, was pregnant and about to give birth. And when she heard the news that the ark of God was captured and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed and gave birth, for her pain came upon her. And about that time of her death, the woman attending her said, "Do not be afraid, for you have borne a son." But she did not answer or pay attention, because she was so into the situation that she didn't even see how God blessed her with a son. And she named the child Ichabod, Ichabod, the glory, meaning that God has departed from Israel because of the ark of God had been captured by the enemies. And she said, the glory of God has departed from Israel. All right. So we are talking about in chapter 4, 1 Samuel chapter 4 is where the Philistines has ended up getting the upper hand of Israel. And everybody is so focused on they captured the ark of God, and not seeing that even though the Israel was defeated, God is still going to be with them, but they didn't see it that way. Okay, so sometimes we be so caught up in our own situations that we don't see that, hey, yeah, we're going through triumphs and tribulation, but God is with us. All right, this concludes 1 Samuel chapter 4, verse 1 to 22. All right. So I was trying to see if I had some stuff from, I don't see. All right, so I had a review, but I don't see it. All right, so I want to encourage everyone to continue to stick with our virtual Bible study. weekly. Go ahead if you can. Go ahead. You can reread First Samuel chapter 4, 1 to 22. Also go back and read First Samuel chapter 1 to 4 so you can be able to be up to date. I know I have been like on and off doing virtual on and off like this due to other things, but I strongly encourage. And I'm trying to finish up Samuel because I'm trying to hurry up and go ahead and get into King David. All right, so this will conclude our virtual Bible study, First Samuel chapter 4, verse 1 through 22. And in chapter 4, we're talking about the Ark of God was captured by the Philistines. The Philistines was the enemies of Israel. So let's move on. And thank you for watching. And let's go ahead and read chapter 3 to see. No, not chapter 3. Go ahead and read chapter 5 so you can be in up to park so you can see what's going to happen with the ark of God. Amen. Thank you for watching, and let's keep it pushing.